from this overview of the Action Strategy Recovery Planning Toolkit. My name is Charles Dayton. I'm the President of Action Strategy, and we've put a few systems together to assist tribal organizations in taking the next phase approach to their planning efforts. The Recovery Toolkit consists of three key elements. One is a readiness assessment, and this is just a brief way in which leaders can look at the internal planning structure and team essentially, and evaluate: are we at the right place to do this plan? Do we have the right mix of members, the right skill sets, and so forth? And identify potential gaps that can be addressed through coaching or training or selection of other members. The other thing is a recovery planning guide, which will take you through a four-phase planning process. In fact, we'll review that here in a moment, but this guide is basically a list of number of templates that can be utilized for creating that recovery plan. And the third is an online recovery plan tracking system. So within your recovery planning, a lot of what you'll be doing is really project management. In fact, a number of initiatives and projects that are adapted to the new reality. And I'll share with you how you can utilize this tracking mechanism to improve both the focus or refocus of the organization, but the implementation of that plan that's developed. So in terms of a framework, we look at the overall goal of this is that we want to learn our way forward, meaning that we take in new information, recognize no one has the complete answers at this point, but we're learning our way through the unknown essentially. And so we go through a process of defining what that process looks like, what team is going to be involved in that, discovering, which is an act of gathering information, data, intelligence to guide our decisions, design the plan that we're going to utilize, incorporating existing plans and new plans, and then also and ultimately developing an action plan and driving that plan through implementation. So some of the questions that we use in our readiness assessment. Think of this: we have formed a cross-functional team with an effective team leader and collective experience to analyze data and trends and so forth. The idea really being, do we have the right individuals with the right experience participating in that team? And it's not always based upon the position of the individuals, is do we have that right perspective and experience mix to move forward? And then even within that team, we have to ask questions about the team dynamics. Is there a level of trust? Can we have those candid conversations in those teams? Can people feel open about sharing what's really on their mind and uncomfortable information as they go through this? And then they develop a project plan. So we say that ultimately this project, it's the mechanism that makes things happen in organizations. And so there's really some discipline that can be utilized by this group to ensure that the project plan is established. So again, defining the process, you establish the recovery planning team, you clarify what is the goal of this recovery, identify risks to project success. This is standard project management. What are the risks? How likely are those things to happen? And then what is your mitigation plan? It's similar to scenario planning, but it can be quickly done within the group. And then again, developing a project plan, which is a sequence of activities that when implemented will result in some type of result. And the next phase is the discover. So the team is in place. The question is, what kinds of questions do we need to ask and answer as part of this recovery plan? And so see there's some of the generic ones. What are the critical financial decisions need to be made, and at what point? How do we leverage our strengths, capabilities, relationships, and so forth? What paradigm shifts are needed in this new environment? What happens if leadership is stuck in kind of an old way of thinking, the security of the past, and is not able to move that viewpoint into what's actually needed by this new environment? How do we adapt our thinking and so forth? And what's the right business model for us moving forward? Some of the specific questions you can think about asking with the group. What are the biggest barriers to our organization's ability to adapt? and how do we deal with those things? Again, these are risks that we have to look at from the beginning. I think this other question is really helpful. So what's the skills and behaviors needed to succeed in this new normal, whether it's working from home, using technology, understanding, interacting with others in a safe way. What do those behaviors and skills look like, and how do we make sure that we incorporate those into our recovery plan? Again, the intent is not just to ask these questions for the sake of asking, but identify, as we discuss these things, what are the implications for action? Because again, that action plan focuses upon the behaviors, the actions that need to take place ultimately to provide a more effective response to what's around us. The next phase in Discover is called scenario planning. So I just, looking at the news this morning, identified 3 scenarios based upon the occurrence of the COVID-19, whether it's a first wave, a second wave, a slow burn model. But scenario planning means that we look at each of these things, we plan for what may happen under different scenarios. So you look in this template, this is in the planning guide, you say what's the impact of the scenario, how likely it is this scenario to occur. And again, we're often relying upon external expertise. What's unknown, what questions do we have, what would trigger our response in this scenario, and ultimately what would be an effective response given the various scenarios that may occur. And these responses form the backbone of that plan. When we get into the design mode, it's really taking your existing strategic plan and then identifying new projects, initiatives, and so forth, and creating we could call it a relative value exercise. So on the left-hand side, imagine your different approaches now, the project initiatives that you'd be looking at, and then you'll screen them through a list of questions and scores. What is the impact upon the clients? Do we have the capability to implement this particular project or initiative? Do we have the resources to implement these things? And does this support this new direction that we have? Is it consistent with the technological requirements we have, and so forth? And this is just very helpful to have the team kind of score and evaluate these options relative to each other, and ultimately to determine which of these things make sense in this recovery plan. This is an action strategy. It's traditionally used for strategic planning within tribal organizations, but can be easily adapted to recovery or even crisis management planning. You'll see that it's organized by the core functions or departments within an organization. We actually created this project plan within the system to say, discovery, recovery, action plan, and then identified the key phases, and then look at some of the subtasks that would need to be done to successfully achieve this. And within the system, you can identify who's going to own what, who are the key resources needed to successfully achieve this, and then what are the requirements in terms of the timeline for achieving this. Say if we want to have this recovery plan done by the end of May, or by May 22nd. Again, we're establishing clear targets based upon what needs to be done. We can also attach documents relevant to the project plan, add comments, so as we're meeting and providing updates on the progress, we can use this as a living, breathing plan that can be communicated with the rest of the project team. As we said, in one of the phases, we talk about integrating existing projects, initiatives with new projects and initiatives, and trying to evaluate which ones make the most sense. So for example, down here under work culture, if we said providing training on working remotely, well, previous to all of this, we had develop professional development plans, roll out strategy communication sessions. In this situation, provide training on working remotely probably scores the highest. It becomes the top priority. So at this point, it's really breaks down into what are the key activities that are needed to ensure that project gets executed effectively. And as I said, we'd like to provide each of the organizations with an action strategy subscription for their recovery action planning, and this will allow them to track the progress of these plans, enabling them to recover more effectively, more efficiently, using the right kinds of tools that will enable them to be successful. Thank you for listening to this overview, and we look forward to supporting your very important efforts. Thank you.